Squad's position as one of the best milsim titles on the market has been established for a good while now. That blend of semi-simulator and approachable gameplay has been a benchmark for many titles, including a number that have come and gone in Squad's time. But with the launch of Squad 6.0 and its flagship Infantry Combat Overhaul, the developers are changing some of the most fundamental and core experiences of the game and trying to bring them back in line with their original vision for the title, or taking it back to its roots, if you will. I'm LCTR. If you like this sort of video, then please tap the thumb and the sub button to get more of the same. So Squad 6.0 isn't a massive content update that you might expect from a large version number bump. No new world locations or map overhauls. But that doesn't mean for a moment that it isn't worth checking out. The change in gameplay philosophy has markedly changed how the game plays and feels. There is some risk to this change too. The friction caused with the current player base, who are used to a faster and comparatively more arcade experience, won't be easy or welcomed by all. This established community of players are being relocated back towards a more sim-like vision for the title, but for many, that won't be a state the game was in when they fell in love with it in the intervening years. The infantry gameplay is now fundamentally less game-like and more sim-like in its ethos. That ability for single players to have a massive direct effect over firefights has been limited most by two main pillars of this infantry combat overhaul. Either of these changes would have been a large shift for the game. To have them at the same time magnifies that feeling of change. Suppression has been refactored into being a much more impactful mechanic in Squad. It existed before, for sure, but seasoned players could often effectively ignore it when taking fire, especially if they thought their aim was better than the engaging players. This is of course not especially realistic. Now, instead of just darkening your screen, the whole game becomes blurred when you're suppressed, and there's no way to sort of power through that and ignore the effect. It often forces disengagement from immediately returning fire, and hence means that indirect fire has become the useful tool it perhaps always should have been in Squad. You could rightly argue that the blurring of the visuals isn't realistic or authentic in itself, but the game does need some way to convey the real-life experience of pressure or fear that individuals would feel in that situation, and in that way, I do think the overall blurring effect is justified, although I would also note that I do find the effect quite eye-straining too. It blurs everything uniformly and stops your eyes from having details to sort of grab onto. I'd like there to be an addition or tuning to the blurring so that the gameplay impact is the same, but that there's less stress placed on player vision. There is some texture to the blurring when you're suppressed by explosions, I think. So something like that, even if it's optional, would be appreciated for normal gunfire suppression too. Adding to this system is a refactor of how much suppression is created by each weapon, basically a rising scale starting with the rifles not doing a huge amount, but still worth doing in groups of course, light machine guns doing more, heavy machine guns and sniper rifles doing a lot. And apart from the aforementioned eye fatigue, I did like how this change affected how the game now plays. The terrific audio design of the weapons always made them feel powerful and impactful, and this change feels in keeping with that. The promotion of indirect fire being a useful thing for players to use is an enjoyable change to the game, as it adds more depth. There were times when I'd take fire and feel like I couldn't immediately engage back with accuracy like you could in Squad before, and because of this, the firefights seem to take longer to play out. It feels like the game has increased depth with the tool of indirect fire now being a valid activity. It does take some time for players to adjust to that change. If you take fire and are forced to find cover, then communicating to your teammates the rough compass direction of an enemy is enough for them to generally fire in that direction and suppress them back. Having a guy with a light machine gun spray a ridgeline in order to pressure an enemy and for you to be able to relocate is now a very functional tactic, and not something that really happened in the game before. I've even had moments in games where medics would ask for covering fire when dragging wounded teammates to safety, and sure, you could do that before too, but now you know that the enemy on the receiving end is really having their ability to engage your heroic medic removed from them. The gunplay and new scope implementation are the other massive change to Squad 6.0, and in many ways this is even more impactful than the suppression change. The scopes themselves have fundamentally changed how they work in the game, gameplay and tech-wise. Before, they used the tried and trusted normal FPS game way of adjusting the player's field of view when using the scope. Using an ACOG? Well, set the field of view to be, 45 degrees, blur the outside, and then put the weapon model in the eye line. Done. It's a simple system that historically works well for many games, with the one downside being that's not a very good representation of how it feels to use a scope in real life. Now, in Squad's 6.0 Infantry Combat Overhaul, they use a picture-in-picture system where the player's normal angle of vision remains more constant, and the actual scope itself is the only area to be magnified significantly. This means that the scopes have become significantly more difficult to use to scan areas. You're of course peering at a small area at one time. But this also means that on the tech side, the game has to render 2 different views of the world and then composite them together. We have the player's eye view and the magnified optic view that need to be rendered for every single frame. This significantly increases the workload for player computers. There are things that can be done, of course, lessening the resolution of the additional views or other techniques to claw back the difference. But in my experience, using a semi-recent machine, I've got a 5000 series AMD CPU and a 3000 series NVIDIA GPU. There were times when I'd be playing at surprisingly low FPS compared to before. I've seen it even dip down to like the 40s. The realism increase is undeniable though. The narrow field of view created means that, unlike before, using a scope of some sort is not the default choice that it once was. If you're fighting in buildings, then you may want to spawn with iron sights. That's not something you could say about the game previously. Combined with this scope change are the changes to gunplay too. Things like weapon sway and the time to raise the weapon and have it steady and ready to use have also massively impacted how the game feels now. If you're at full sprint and then see an enemy, your ability to stop, raise the weapon, and provide accurate, effective fire is reduced. All those actions take time for your character to process. This lessens the player's ability to do everything all of the time, and more considered movement and pacing is required to stay immediately effective. Fundamentally, the ability for a single player to carry a squad has been lessened by this change especially, and so further importance has been of course placed on communication and teamwork. It's an interesting change for sure. It's arguably taking this side of the game in a more authentic direction, but I'm not sure that the current tuning is exactly where it should end up. I've had occasions where it seemed to take an agonizingly long time to get a clear picture through an ACOG scope, and it's literally black sometimes when it's misaligned to your view. And even in situations where I'd expect a professional soldier to be much more used to handling the weapon. And it kind of feels like the other side to the suppression system's use of blurring to convey suppression through a visual medium, you know? The game here is trying to limit how quickly players can become effective and to increase the time that it takes for combat to play out and to take some of the snappy arcadeness from the experience. I think it takes it even further from the gameplay of something like Hell Let Loose or Insurgency Sandstorm and pushes it more to the simulation side. It also promotes a certain playstyle. If you are still or crouched or even prone, then an enemy moving towards you has an inherent disadvantage once any engagement happens. Presuming equal skill levels, they simply won't be able to accurately shoot at a time when you will. So slowed movement when enemies are near becomes essential for attackers to minimize this. These are without doubt interesting changes to squads, maybe even brave changes. The devs in their news post on Steam seem open to feedback and are looking to tune these systems further based on player feedback. I'd certainly imagine there to be a significant strength of feeling from the community, given the obvious friction these changes can create for regular players. I do think that players should be looking to at least trying the game with an open mind. You might take issue with the severity of some of these changes, but trying them out and experiencing how they affect the pace of the game and whether that change is welcomed is perhaps another approach. It does take some time to get used to. My first game was pretty odd feeling and frustrating, but after a few hours I'm a lot more at home. This isn't the squad of before, but these changes don't feel like opposing fundamental philosophies to how the player base sees the design of the game, and hence why they fell in love with playing it. It's just that at the moment, all these changes together, they feel like a lot. I'd say give the update a good run and then give your feedback in a way that can be actioned by the devs. You know, after all, writing a Steam review that says, "Oh, this sucks," isn't something that can be easily added to the game. The other parts of the game that players know and love are still here in this 6.0 update of Squad. The superb weapon audio and general standard of the community still feel like high points. The audio is still a benchmark for these style of games. It's incredibly immersive and at times with artillery, awe-inspiring and overwhelming. But it truly is the quality of the average player that elevates the experience of playing Squad. It perhaps attracts a player that is a little older than your average Call of Duty lobby, and it shows with genuine teamwork and laughs. It of course means that when there is no communication and coordination, the game becomes very clearly a military sandbox, and alone can be a rather empty experience. So finding good community servers with regular players is, I've found, the best way to experience Squad. Experience it, they do. And in fact, over the last weekend, we had a peak of over 17,000 concurrent players. Yes, this is an update, so players will flood back to see what's new, but even the previous weekdays had it over 10,000 players. So what do you think about this Squad 6.0 Infantry Combat Overhaul? Are you a long-termer with strong opinions, or perhaps a hell-let-loose player looking for something with a few helicopters to fly? Maybe you're even new to this milsim genre, or thinking up lacing up your boots for the first time. Please leave all your powerful thoughts and feelings in the comment section below right now. Like always, I'll be reading every single one of them. I'll see you down there. If you did enjoy this video, please do leave a thumb up and maybe even tap the subscribe button. It really does help me grow the channel and keep making videos just like this one. Thank you so much for watching and for all your continued support. It really is appreciated. I'll see you next time. Take care.
It's a really kind of terrain near before.
LCT or something.
God damn it.